When he started tinkering with engines as a poor child, no one could have predicted that Frederick Henry Royce would one day create some of the world's most expensive cars. Hit that like button, let's get started. Born in 1863 in Wilton, England, he was the youngest of 5 children to James and Mary, who ran a flour mill. James lacked business skills and the family struggled financially. In 1867, they filed for bankruptcy and moved to London. By the age of 4, Henry had his first job as a bird scarer on a local farm for 6 pence a week. In 1872, his father passed away, and the children had to work to support themselves. By age 15, Henry had completed only 1 year of school but began an apprenticeship with the Great Northern Railway Works. He educated himself in algebra, French, and electrical engineering, but had to quit after the 3 years due to financial issues. After working for several companies, he founded his own F.H. Royce and Company with fellow engineer Ernest Clermont at the age of 22. They made electrical components, but Henry's true interest was in motor cars. Meanwhile, Charles Rolls, born in 1877 in London's Berkeley Square, was the youngest child of Lord and Lady Langatak. With a passion for engineering, he studied mechanical engineering at Trinity College in Cambridge, earning his nickname Dirty Rolls for his engine tinkering. He was the first undergraduate to own a motor car, a Peugeot Phaeton, after traveling to Paris at the age of 18. At the time, this was extremely unusual as most people hadn't even heard of cars yet. After graduating in 1898, Charles began working on a steam yacht and then at the London at Northwestern Railway. He was more interested in motoring, pioneering, and salesmanship. However, and with financial support from his father, he opened one of the first car dealerships in Britain in 1903. He named the company C.S. Rolls & Co. For the next couple of years, he dedicated himself to importing and selling Peugeot and Minerva cars. Business was booming, and Charles used the money to fund his sporting activities. Besides being an avid motorist, pioneer, and racer, he was also an eager aviator. And as you can guess, both of these hobbies are anything but cheap. Unfortunately for Charles, however, his lifelong passion would eventually cost him more than just his money. When running his company, F.H. Royce and Company, Henry became increasingly interested in motor cars. In 1901, he decided to improve a second-hand 2-cylinder Decaville car that he had bought. But he wanted more, and so he decided to build a car on his own. Henry had an instinctive desire for perfection, and having found construction faults in the Decaville, he vowed to do better. By the end of 1903, he designed and built his first petrol engine, and by the next year, he drove his first Royce 10-horsepower motor car into town. By now, 2 decades has passed since Henry set up the company. His first car was a success, and so he set out to create another one and another. Of the 3 cars that he had built, he gave one of his business partners, Ernest Clermont, and the other he sold to one of their shareholders, Henry Edmunds. And it was Henry Edmunds who would eventually arrange the meeting between Rolls and Royce. Henry Edmunds was a shareholder in Royce's company and a friend of Rolls. After having bought one of Royce's car, he began boasting to Rolls about it. At the time, Rolls was frustrated with only being able to sell foreign imports in his company, so Edmunds arranged a meeting. Little did Edmunds know that the meeting would change the future of motoring forever. While Rolls had always preferred 3- and 4-cylinder cars, Royce's 2-cylinder vehicle made a big impression on him. Within minutes of seeing it, he knew he had found what he was looking for. He took the motor car for a drive and agreed on the spot to sell as many motor cars as Royce could build. The 2 men made an unusual duo. There was not only a massive age gap, but also a a class and education gap. For starters, Royce was 41 years old while Rolls was only 26. The young Rolls had enjoyed a fancy education and the prestigious Trinity College, whereas Royce's skills were largely self-taught. And while Rolls had spent his young adult years racing around his fancy cars, Royce had been working hard to make ends meet. Would they be able to see eye to eye? While Henry Royce and Charles Rolls were two very different people, they also made a great duo, and the massive success with the cars led to the creation of the Rolls Royce Company in 1906. They became the launch of the six-cylinder Silver Ghost. Within a year, it had hailed as the best car in the world. Impressive! But for this, they also had Charles's partner to think. Creating a brand requires vision. So while Henry and Charles were busy building and selling motors, it was Charles's partner, Claude Johnson, who took on the role of managing director. He knew it was vital to expand the company's reputation and publicity. Genius that he was, he orchestrated a series of stunts to promote the quietness and reliability of Rolls-Royce motor cars. One of his early adverts for the 4250 horsepower motor car promoted it as the six-cylinder Rolls-Royce, not one of the best but the best car in the world. With that ad, Claude introduced the phrase that would forever be associated with Rolls-Royce. It was incredibly effective. It demonstrated Rolls-Royce's superior performance and created a global demand for their world-class engineering. Claude was so integral to the company's success that he became known as the hyphen in Rolls-Royce. Of course, marketing alone will get you only so far, and both Henry and Charles dedicated themselves to delivering the best quality possible. But it was especially Henry who had a knack for pushing himself to the limit when it came to work. Henry was renowned as a hard worker who never ate properly. Unfortunately, these habits severely affected his health, but surprisingly, he would end up outliving his business partner Charles by a couple of decades. Over the years, Daredevil Charles's interest in aviation kept growing. He even tried to persuade Henry to develop a design for an aero engine, but Henry refused to continue living out his aviation dreams. Charles bought a Wright Flyer aircraft, with which he made over 200 flights. In 1910, he became the first person to make a non-stop doable flight across the English Channel. But just 1 month later, everything changed. During a flying display at Bournemouth, Charles was killed in an air crash. He was only 32 years old. He became the first Briton to die in a plane crash, and his premature death meant the end of a short-lived Rolls-Royce partnership. Now Henry would have to continue their legacy on his own. Henry had an innate work ethic, and his innovative designs established Rolls-Royce's reputation for superior engineering and quality. He uncompromisingly pursued his basis principle at establishing the design with both the finest materials and the highest levels of craftsmanship. To put it into own words, strive for perfection in everything you do. Take the best that exists and make it better. When it does not, design it. During the First World War, the company expanded into manufacturing something Charles had once requested: aero engines, and during the next couple of decades, the company did extremely well. Unfortunately, Henry kept struggling with his health, and in 1933, he succumbed to digestive tract problems. His death had been brought on by his early years of poor nutrition and a lifetime of overwork. He had spent much of the last years of his life as a semi-invalid, but that didn't stop him from working though. His never-failing enthusiasm and dedication to engineering prevailed, and he continued to work until the very last moment. Literally, his last sketch was made from his deathbed a few hours before he died. He was 70 years old. Rolls-Royce has remained a famous name. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe for more interesting and helpful content. See you next time.